Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on today's solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, because there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, once again, Coulter, Little Orphan Annie, is at it again, saying that Ted Cruz is being sleazy about exposing Donald Trump's consistently inconsistent political past on a recent airing of the Megyn Kelly show, or the Kelly File, over on the Fox News channel. Of course, we mustn't forget that Donald J. Trump has a rather checkered past with Megyn Kelly that has been inconsistent as well. Remember, in 2011, he had told, or actually, I believe it was either late 2011, early 2012, he told Megyn Kelly that any presidential candidate that contemplated skipping a debate was a coward and didn't have any place being in the running. Of course, he changed his mind about that, right before the last Hawkeye state debate, before the caucus voting was to begin in Iowa, and then admitted that that was a mistake. And his record is there for everyone to see. And that's all that Ted Cruz was mentioning with respect to Donald Trump's checkered past when he was on Megyn Kelly's show. So I'm sorry, Missy Coulter there, but I don't see how that's being sleazy. Just pointing out the facts. Apparently that's now sleazy to you. But I don't recall you saying anything when your hero there, the New York billionaire, businessman, and real estate tycoon, Donald J. Trump, was making fun of a disabled reporter. It's that type of intellectual disingenuousness that just grates against the American public. It shows that there is no class in the leadership. It's the same thing with Donald Trump dropping that P word for describing the female genitalia, as if that was somehow something polite to say on the campaign trail. Sure, somebody in the audience said it, but he repeated it. The whole impetus behind what the President of the United States of America is supposed to be, it's the highest office in the land. It's supposed to be representative of all American citizens. And I'm sorry, I want somebody in there who has a little bit of class. Call me old-fashioned. It may be my old Southern roots. After all, I'm a sixth-generation Texan, but I do not want somebody who is so flippant about cordiality. Because if you are going to be a true representative for the United States of America, a spokesman for every single American citizen who is, after all, every popular sovereign in this country, then I expect you to have a little bit of class. I expect you to have a little bit of taste. And certainly class and taste is not something that Ann Coulter has been putting on display as of late. I'm not actually sure what's happened to Ann Coulter or why she's become this way. She became this way with respect to Mittens Romneykins back during the 2012 election cycle. So Annie has a little trouble picking winners, I guess. Either way, for her to come out and say that it was sleazy of Ted Cruz to point to the past of Donald J. Trump, that's funny. It's laughable. It's shocking. If you're going to vie for the highest office in the land, then your track record ought to be put on the record. And as for Donald J. Trump, since he's never held public office before, we can only go off of his past statements. And boy, are there a bunch of them there. It's funny. Trump recently came out and said that he was totally against Common Core. But then, when he was in the Palmetto State, he said, I'm for keeping it. Then, immediately, he rushed out to Twitter to try and correct the record and say that no, he is for the localization of education and control of education. That's the problem, folks. He doesn't know what he believes. He's just pandering. That's all he's capable of doing. That may work in business, and I know that that's the first line of defense that his ardent followers always turn to, is that he was just doing this in the course of business. But the country is more than a business. The country is very important. Our Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and there is no mention by Donald J. Trump of how he's going to implement policies that are in line with the Constitution, or that he is going to return the country to strict adherence to that sacred document. That is what we need if we are going to rekindle this country, if we are going to see a renaissance in this country, the likes of which the world has never seen before. It's got to be based on the United States Constitution. But that's the thing, folks. I don't think Donald J. Trump has a thought about the Constitution ever cross his mind. Now, I'm not out to just besmirch the followers of Donald J. Trump. Ultimately, we're all going to have to come together at the end of this to support the country. But the thing is, Donald J. Trump is no different than Hillary Clinton. He talks a good game. He changes what his allegiances are, or what his viewpoints are, depending on the audience that he's speaking to. The same is true of Madam Clinton. This is the stark and shocking reality that we have to grapple with and come to terms with, because if we fail to do that, then we are handing over the reins of power from one narcissistic dictator to another narcissistic dictator. That cannot and should not be done in this great representative republic of ours. It's staggering to me that Ann Coulter would ignore parts of the facts. But then again, I look at her checkered history and see that that's not that difficult to comprehend. Somebody who actually dated Bill Maher clearly does not have a good character for judgment. She is a poor judge of character, and that leaves nothing to the imagination with respect to what we should think of her nominee or choice for nominee for the highest office in the land. You see, everywhere we go in this country, we have to actually examine the facts as just the facts, because the facts tell more than the words. You know, it's that whole old adage that has been with us for time immemorial, that actions speak louder than words. Well, Donald J. Trump's actions and his lack of consistency throughout this 2016 presidential election cycle speaks volumes about the man's character. And the fact that he is willing to mock a disabled reporter, the fact that he is willing to utter vulgarities time and again, the fact that he's willing to retweet these KKK-style organizations or these neo-Nazi organizations, that's just beyond belief. But it's not beyond belief. It's the type of raw edge that goes towards his style of shock and awe. And there really is no other way to describe it. He's trying to conjure up popularity and media attention by just being shock and awe, saying anything for everything. You know, we here at the Wright Flyer have absolutely declared war on the doctrine of political correctness, but we do believe in class. You know, I have to agree with Mark Levin on that. How about a little bit of class? Because when you look at the president that we have now, he is besmirching the office. You know that there is supposed to be respect for the highest office in the land. At least traditionally speaking, there has always been respect for the highest office of the land. Well, how can there be respect for that office when the individuals who go into that office tarnish it day by day, leaving it in shambles, leaving all of the grace of the past behind? You know, for the greater first half of this country's history, people looked up to and revered George Washington as the pinnacle of what it was to be president. He was the model. And George Washington was a man of good manners, high taste, high society. He stood up for principled values and absolutely governed via our shared Constitution. But I don't see that with respect to Donald J. Trump. I don't think that he even knows the history with respect to it. And then with little orphan Annie there, Ann Coulter, who's just gone off the deep end, she been uttering all sorts of anti-Semitic statements, and she's gone off the full deep end of xenophobia. Now, I am absolutely for slowing down legal immigration and for deporting all illegal aliens. But I do not believe that we win over the American people by using just outlandish, nonsensical things that should have been buried in the medieval past. I believe that we can be honorable about this, and that we can be upstanding citizens about this, and that is why I am more and more impressed by Ted Cruz each day that he goes out onto the campaign trail. And yet every time that Donald J. Trump opens his mouth, he loses that much more credibility with not just me, but the entire American electorate. Think about it, folks. He is now vying to take the top spot in the Palmetto State of South Carolina. The people of the South have a upstanding tradition of being polite and cordial. You know, the hospitality of the South is famous nationwide. And the way that Donald J. Trump just goes out and does these hollow, meaningless, empty, and brash platitudes and vulgarities will not rub the people of the South in the right way. It's not a good idea to campaign like that in the South. Now, I could be wrong about this. The anger in this country could be such, or to such an extent now, that the people are just blinded by their rage. I certainly hope that's not the case, because what we need now, more than ever, is a leader that is a principled constitutionalist. You know, your love for country should come before your political party affiliation. Your love for country, your creator comes first, your country comes second, your political views come third, and you yourself come last. Family comes before you. And it's always been that way. That's part of the natural order of things. That's why Jeremy and I have mentioned that the entire system of polity in the United States, the entire political philosophy of the United States and the American people is absolutely based on natural law tenets. These are timeless principles that were handed down to us from Providence itself and was meant to be safeguarded by the popular sovereigns so that each successive generation until kingdom come could have the same fundamental and unalienable rights as we have. And you see, folks, it's not just that we were supposed to hand that down to the next generations, it's that we were supposed to expand it to ensure that they had an even greater environment in which to exercise their fundamental and unalienable rights. That is our duty and our obligation, because every fundamental and unalienable right is couched within express duty, obligation, and responsibility. So we, as the American people, are supposed to be the watchmen who protect that, who safeguard that, proactively maintain and safeguard our fundamental and unalienable rights. But it becomes very difficult to do so when you have charlatans like little Annie Coulter going out there and saying that if you point to the facts and the truth, you are a bunch of sleazeballs. That's literally what she thinks we are, a bunch of sleazeballs. Well, with friends like that, who needs enemies? She's doing the Democrats' work for them, and she must be proud of herself for it. Well, I mean, once again, she did date Bill Maher, so I will let her own history be the catalyst upon which we judge her judgment of character. As for me, I'm going to go by somebody who has a staunch track record of standing up for and defending and protecting our shared Constitution. Because, folks, as Jeremy and I have said, going back to our first episode, which aired on September 11th of 2015, the Constitution is the absolute key to getting this nation back on track. And it falls on the shoulders of we, the popular sovereigns, the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this great representative republic of ours, to stand up for our country, to do what is necessary to defend and protect our fundamental and unalienable rights. It's a sad day, though, when Ann Coulter seems to have forgotten that that is an integral part of the character and identity of being an American citizen. She can go out and spew whatever platitude she wants. She can go out and attack me all she wants. All of the stormtroopers can come out of the woodwork and attack me. For all I care, it means nothing, because they will not silence me. They will not stop us here at the Wright Flyer, because we are dedicated to our duty and obligation of proactively maintaining and safeguarding our fundamental and unalienable rights, for spreading the knowledge of our shared Constitution, and for doing whatever is necessary and proper to wrench this country back from those Fabian socialists who are hell-bent on destroying everything that we hold near and dear in this great representative republic of ours. That is a calling. That is something that I feel inspired to do. It is something that comes from the history that I have studied, from my own family history, seeing as we have been here since 1635. That's right, folks. My love of this country is directly rooted to my family and an understanding that the natural law tenets that underpin our shared United States Constitution is absolutely applicable to all of us. And I love the people of America, and I want them to be strong, and I want them to have a robust and bright future. And I inherently understand that any bright future and any great future must, by its nature, be connected with our shared United States Constitution. Because when we divorce ourselves from the Constitution, which absolutely outlines, defines, and mandates the proper scope and application of government, that is when you see the type of societal and moral decay that is currently plaguing this great representative republic of ours. It's a reality that we cannot turn our backs to, but it is something that the political elites in this country have turned their backs to, and that is problematic. That is why there is such disenfranchisement amongst the popular sovereigns in this country. They turn and see that everywhere they look, their leaders are standing in stark opposition to the various positions that would help ensure that this country would go on to a bright future filled with prosperity that's even greater than this current generation. You know, I'm going to share a personal story now, going back to my days in college. And I attended college at St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas. It's a little Catholic university in South Austin. And I had a professor in a class that was called The American Experience. And she was giddy, saying that for the first time in America's history, the up-and-coming generation would inherit less of a country than the preceding generations, because there is not the type of opportunity now that there was before. That, to be excited about that, to have a gleam in your eye and a twisted grin spreading across your face, curling upon your chapped thin lips, that speaks volumes about the type of character of the people who are indoctrinating the up-and-coming young generations. You want to know why the youth in this country is so disconnected from reality? Why they would be attracted to the lollipops and rainbow farts of a Senator Nerdface Bernie Sanders, thinking that we can all just, you know, hold hands, clasp hands together and sing Kumbaya frickin' ya? It's because they have been indoctrinated with this nonsense since their earliest days in school. There can be no question that the institutions of education throughout the United States of America have become breeding grounds for radical Fabian socialist ideas. This has been a problem that has been with us for well over half a century. The great author, professor, and truth purveyor with respect to the Fabian Socialists, Zygmunt Dobbs, said in his magnus opus Keynes at Harvard that these people have been infiltrating education since the turn of the 20th century. You know, folks, we are now 100 years past that, and we can see just how far the twisted machinations of the Fabian Socialists have gone in radically and fundamentally transforming this great representative republic of ours. We can see that there are incessant efforts to pollute and pervert the minds of the children in the United States. And what's so funny and ghastly about it all is that the Fabian Socialists will always say that they're doing this to save the children. Anytime a potentate, a dictator, a despot wants to come and trample upon your fundamental and unalienable rights, one of the first slogans that they will champion is that it's for the children, that they act to save the children. Stop using the children as political pawns in your deadly games. Yes, children are very important. That is why we must stand up for and defend the natural order of things. Because when you look at the natural law application, the natural hierarchy of government, it starts with the basic fundamental building block of any society, and that is the family. The family is so important because it provides that stable environment in which to rear children so that those children grow up to be productive members of society and possess a well-rounded understanding of their civic duties and obligations and what it is to be an American. Is it any wonder then that a Karl Marx type figure would be diametrically opposed to the nuclear family, that he would call marriage legalized prostitution, and that the Fabian Socialists would try to attack this traditional institution that has a sacred right to it going back to antiquity? Of course they would destroy that, because if you destroy that, you take away the pillar, the fundamental building block of society. And if you take away that cornerstone, you begin to unravel everything that that society stands for and represents. And that is what they are all about. Socialists and radical extreme left-wingers are always about destroying the system that existed before they infected it with their virus. That is the truth that we have to awaken to. But instead, we are having to fight off the vicious platitudes and attacks of people like little Annie Coulter and Donald J. Trump. All of this meaningless, worthless obfuscation and just brash vulgarities being thrown out to distract people. Folks, it really is nothing short of bread and circuses, like what was seen in the teetering days of the Roman Empire. Have we really fallen to such a degree that decadence of that sort is now the modus operandi of even those who profess to be on the right? Be wary of these false prophets of right-wing ideology. If something sounds too good to be true, 9 times out of 10, it is. But I'm going to fall back on a Reaganism. We must trust but verify. That is why when I look at the message of Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz, I am amazed, because I see what he says and I go and I look at his record, and if you really look at his record, he stands up for what he says. And you look at his troubled childhood, because there were a lot of instances of turbulence with his family. You see that he overcame. You see that his family came together as any average American family does to care for their kids, to see that their children have a better and brighter future. His commitment to the Constitution began at a young age, and that is admirable. It reminds me of my own journey to where I am today. And I think that each and every one of us, the true popular sovereigns, the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country, can look upon the story of Ted Cruz and relate to it. I can't relate to Donald Trump. There's nothing relatable about that. I've known who I am from a very young age. I've known what my principles are from a very young age, and I have not wavered from them. I know what is important for this country, and I know that the Constitution is the key to resolving the great plethora of problems that currently face the United States. I know that it's going to take an exerted and continuous effort on the part of the popular sovereigns to bring this country back from the brink of ruination. And then I look at a charlatan like Donald J. Trump, who speaks a good game, but he stumbles and trips when he tries to walk the life of a conservative. All of these supposed gaffes, all of these supposed flip-flops should be sending up red flags to every decent, hardworking American citizen. But in this political environment, it's not. And the reason for that is that the American people are sick and tired of the political status quo. They're tired of the political powers that be that have lied to them time and time again from continuing to engage in this bit of political kabuki theater. It's threadbare, it's thin, it's tired, and people are absolutely fed up with it. I understand that. But we need to look past our emotions and regain control of our rational faculties, because you must apply the only litmus test that matters. And I know I've said this on multiple occasions, but the only litmus test that we must apply to determine whether a candidate is qualified to hold the reins of political power in this country, it's not what recent flavor of skunk water that they put out for skunk pelt hairpieces, or how Donald J. Trump may be combing his toupee on a certain day, or what irrelevant thing he said on one day or the next day. It's the Constitution. It's the Constitution. That is the only litmus test. Why? Because it's based on natural law principles that are timeless. Our country's future is depending upon our ability to be able to cut through all the crap. And let's face it, folks, 9 times out of 10, what Donald J. Trump is saying is nothing more than unmitigated, unadulterated crap. That is all there is to say about the message of Donald J. Trump. He's not some paragon of conservative virtue. He's not some supporter of our great representative republic. He is a supporter of himself. He holds up a mirror, and he gazes into it like Narcissus gazed into the pond. But remember that there was retribution for Narcissus. He was forced to be painfully linked to his ego and couldn't break away from it. Is that what we want for our president? Is that the type of leadership that this country feels is necessary to break through all of the problems that face this country, when in fact the key to it is to going back to strict adherence to the Constitution, to force all levels of government throughout this great representative republic back to that strict adherence? And folks, there is only one candidate who has consistently said this throughout this entire 2016 election cycle, hell, throughout his entire political career, and that is Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz. Folks, it really is that easy. But again, I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm just expressing what it is that my own research, that my own judgment and conclusions have brought me to. Ultimately, you have to make this decision for yourself, and I will not begrudge anybody their right to their voice or to their vote. In fact, I will do everything in my power to defend that right for everyone, because we as American citizens are called upon to stand up for the rights for all of us. The fundamental and unalienable rights that are possessed, enjoyed, and exercised by the American people must also be safeguarded by the American people. That is why our Constitution, in the preamble, starts with "we the people." We the people. It is so powerful. It is so important. It is something we cannot ignore. Yet I have not yet once heard Donald J. Trump utter this. Not once. Not once. And I think that that ultimately comes down to the fact that he doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe that it's important. He doesn't believe that it's a part of his philosophy. He certainly doesn't live his life as though it is an important part of his philosophy. Otherwise, he would be pushing that as a central tenet of his campaign. This is something that must be taken into consideration, and it is again why I say that the Constitution itself is the only litmus test that should be applied in determining whether or not a candidate is qualified to hold the reins of political power in this country. That is the ultimate determination that we, the people of the United States of America, must make. And time is running out. You know, with respect to the people that are really pushing for Trump, one of the things that I've heard repeated time and again is that we need him because he's a deal maker. You know, that's what Sarah Palin said. That's one of the things that Ann Coulter's repeated. That's what a lot of his followers have repeated. But you know who speaks of a deal and deal making? Nerdface Boyd me saying there was, we need a new deal, a new deal. You see, folks, this goes all the way back to the twisted, dark, and malicious history of the radical and extreme fringes of the left in this country. They always talk about deal making. They always use vague and ambiguous terms. Why? Because they don't want to necessarily have their true point of view come to the surface. If it comes to the surface, then the people discover what their true intent and purposes are. And they can't afford that because they know that they cannot win in the marketplace of ideas. This, again, is why it is so important for us to delve into the constitutional application and beliefs of the various candidates vying for the highest office of the land. It's also why I say that is the only litmus test that matters. Because when you stop and think about it, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2, the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And one of the things that my Air Marshal, First Air Marshal Nelson Ward, talked about is that we need to discuss this whole issue of whether or not women should be required to register for the draft before they can vote. You know, the selective services requirement is required of all males who seek to vote. You have to register for the draft in case the draft is ever brought back. Now, of course, we don't currently have a draft implemented, but so far as it stands now, when you look at the type of court cases that have addressed this issue, it ties into there being a quasi-selective class here. And again, all of this is walking the tightrope of almost being unconstitutional. In fact, most likely, I'm sure, unconstitutional. But this idea of someone just based on gender having to register for something in order to vote and another gender not, you're either going to have to allow that to be the case so that it's not violative of the Equal Protection Clause, or you're going to have to completely dismantle the selective services. So if we're still going to have the idea of women going into combat situations, then yes, it should be that they, along with the males, have to register for selective services, or no one has to register for it. And, another area where this would be violative is of the 15th Amendment right to vote. So there's all sorts of swirling constitutional problems there. But do we hear this addressed by little orphan Annie Coulter? Do we hear this addressed by Donaldus Caesar Trumpus? No. They're off trying to insult and attack Ted Cruz instead of actually discussing issues that are relevant to the American people, issues that are relevant to our shared Constitution. You see, folks, there must be a bigger picture, something that is more important than the egos of the people vying for the highest office in the land, because there has to be a greater thing than just the people, because we are a nation of laws, not of men. Again, this all ties into the foundational application of the United States of America, the foundational definition, the natural law tenets that underpin our shared Constitution and our representative Republican form of government. Again, it also speaks to why it is so important that we combat any and every attempt to claim that the United States of America is a democracy. You know, folks, that has become ingrained in us. It has been an erroneous misnomer that has been repeated time and again for 150 years almost. But the United States of America is not a democracy. We are a representative republic with democratic elections. And sure, I can already hear some of the naysayers, some of the low information people jumping up and down, frothing at the mouth, throwing their vulgarities and their ad hominem attacks my way, saying, "No, America is a democracy, so you're for a dictator. You're for dictatorship." Folks, take your Valium, sit down, calm down, just breathe, because I'm going to explain. A republic understands and recognizes and adheres to the rights of the individual popular sovereign, whereas a democracy only recognizes the sovereign rights of the majority, thereby allowing something known as a tyranny of the majority to exist. That is diametrically opposed to the system of government devised, built, and advocated for by our founding fathers. We have to come to grips with reality here, folks. We have to understand that words do have meanings, and that we have to cut through the little games of semantics that the radical and extreme fringes of the left have been playing time and again for well over a century. We have to take this country back, and part of that is understanding the lexicon of liberty. Now, what is this lexicon of liberty? Yeah, try saying that 8 times fast. Lexicon of liberty, what is it? It is the true definitions and the true use of words that our founding fathers intended when they ratified the Constitution. Because as Jeremy and I have oft times repeated on past episodes of the Wright Flyer, the Constitution is this great contract that exists between the popular sovereigns and their federal government. It is something that cannot be ignored. It is something that should be strictly adhered to as the supreme law of the land, and it cannot be construed, meaning interpreted. Oh, but already the voices are coming back. Judicial review, the Supreme Court interprets all the time. Well, if you look within the 4 corners of Article 3, the part of the Constitution that absolutely defines what the court is and what its powers are, judicial review was not given to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gave it to itself in a case called Marbury versus Madison, going back to 1803. Now, why that is so important is it shows that, once again, the types of problems that we see in this country are rooted from a distancing by the various branches of government, by various governmental actors and agents from the Constitution. All of the problems are rooted to some sort of disconnect that exists between this supreme law of the land and those that are supposed to be the agents who raise their right hand and swear an oath of obligation to defend and protect and adhere to the Constitution. You see, that oath obviously has little to no meaning to people like President Barack Hussein Obama. It obviously has little meaning to those who run around and do everything in their power to basically trample upon the fundamental and unalienable rights of the popular sovereigns. You see, folks, again, it is so vital that we all have a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution. It is important that we continue to push for an enhanced understanding of the Constitution, not this type of revisionist crap that Fabian socialist teachers and professors have been peddling, not the sort of destructive, empty, hollow, meaningless platitudes that are being thrown out by little orphan Annie Coulter and Donaldus Caesar Trumpus. You know, we can all sit there and say who's great on reality TV, but reality TV ain't reality. It's just a bunch of failures, basically, vying for attention. I'm sorry. America's greater than that. And I'm not going to bow down to that or support somebody just because they had some popularity trying to pick someone from a TV audience or a TV contestant to be the next great hire for their company. That's meaningless. It has no implication as to the great polity of this representative republic of ours. And it pains me to see that that is what we have fallen to as a nation, that someone like that, who is consistently inconsistent with respect to his political philosophy, with respect to his so-called heartfelt principles, that what matters is that he was on TV. Oh my goodness, he was on TV. We gotta vote for him. The boob tube knows best. Boob tube knows all. And yet he's a gaffe machine. And he spews vulgarities, and he makes comments like being a chameleon. I don't want a chameleon. I want somebody who's a steadfast defender, an ardent defender and supporter of the supreme law of the land. I want somebody that is going to bring the country back towards strict adherence to the Constitution. I want somebody to kindle the revolutionary spirit of the American people towards going back to the Constitution. Not somebody who says, I'm going to build a wall. It's huge. It's huge. It's beautiful. It's going to have a door. You ask him how he's going to build it. It's going to be huge, and I'm going to make Mexico pay for it. You know, I built a tower, and everybody loves my huge tower. Look at my coif. I combed it a certain way today. That's not leadership. That's a narcissist trying to get his hooks, to clutch his claws into the body politic of this great representative republic of ours. But if you asked him whether we are a democracy or a republic, he wouldn't know. You know, he's driven by penultimate concerns. He's driven by a desire to make money and to make deals. But remember, the New Deal was a deal. It was a deal for socialism. And in the past, Donald J. Trump has pushed for universalized medicine and health care. He still pushes for it and then pushes back and says, no, but we can't let people, just die on the street. Irrespective of the fact that since the 1980s, the government has forced, through EMTALA and COBRA, emergency rooms to treat somebody, to stabilize them, or to give them life-saving treatment. And it's killed a lot of private charity hospitals, as I mentioned on the last Solo Flight special. But none of this crosses the mind of Trump. He's just going to say what he thinks sounds good. He's going to say what he thinks going to sway the most amount of voters into his camp and to his direction as he possibly can. Damn the torpedoes, if you will. But that's reckless, it's brash, and it doesn't represent the true character and caliber of the American spirit, ideology, and identity. You know, we have to stop the balkanization, the seeds of divisiveness and dissent that have been sown in our country, and we must put an end to the unraveling of the societal fabric of the United States. We have to have a positive message. But I don't see a positive message coming from someone who sits there and mocks a reporter who suffers from a disability. I don't. I don't think that that's intelligent. You know, what he should be doing is applauding that reporter for overcoming a disability. You ought to applaud anybody who sits there and says, look, I have this disability, there's a reason I have it, and I'm going to overcome it. God gives us the strength to overcome and to use the tools and the strengths that he gave us to create something better. That's something that a Ted Cruz understands. That's something that a person of character understands. But I'm not seeing that from Donald Trump. And I'm not seeing it from his little vocal cheerleader, little orphan Annie Toto there. Because if you remember in the Wizard of Oz, Toto was supposed to be the Christian temperance movement. Well, we're updating it. Little orphan Annie, yep, 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 yep. Oh, Ted Cruz is sleazy, yep, 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 yep. Stop your yapping. Stop your yapping. If you don't have anything positive to say, little orphan Annie, then button it. Because you're damaging the conservative image. You know, Annie, I know it's hard for you to believe, but there are things that are greater than you in this world. Take, for instance, the Constitution. Take, for instance, the true popular sovereigns in this country, we the people. If you want to have a truly populist message, little Annie Toto, you need to recognize that the people must be respected. You don't do it by just insulting everyone. You don't do it by saying that they don't have a right to their opinion. You don't do it in that fashion. You do it by standing up for the principles of truth, knowing full well that the truth trumps everything. And the reason that it does is because it comes from providence, because it is part of the natural law tenets that underpin this great representative republic of ours. You see, folks, it always has to come back to this greater image, this greater foundation, and this greater meaning of what the United States represents and what the people stand for. That is what the people are yearning for and hungering for in a leader. Yes, we're all tired of the cancerous, idiotic, and moronic doctrine of political correctness, but that's been peddled by Fabian socialists. And don't think that Donald Trump hasn't fallen back on political correctness when it suited his needs. Think back to that debate where he whined about Ted Cruz, speaking of his own words that he used in a 1999 interview with Meet the Press, to say that it was his New York values that made him extremely and exceedingly pro-abortion, and that it was his New York values that made him think that guns weren't necessary, except for the fact that until we ultimately got rid of them, as long as bad people had them, then good people should have them, but ultimately he was against guns. That is political correctness, when he flipped it and tried to say that what Ted Cruz was speaking about was 9/11. That is using the victims of 9/11 for political purposes. And that was trying to say that 9/11 is my trump card, it's part of my big tower, it's huge, you can't speak against it because it's huge. What a charlatan, what a farce. And you support that? And you say that Ted Cruz pointing out these these intricacies about Trump and his inconsistencies is somehow wrong? His intricacies should be absolutely exploited because he has gone up. These intricacies of him are part of his public record. They're part of who he is. And they're part of what the American people are going to be evaluating with respect to who should be the next president. That's absolutely part of the truth of what Ted Cruz said during the last nationally televised gutless opposition party presidential candidate debate. And those intricacies of Donald J. Trump's, those intricacies, they're just there. They stick out like a sore thumb. Folks, we can't ignore that. If this man can change his opinion on a dime then how do we know that he's really standing up for what we believe? How do we know that he's really good for America? These are the types of serious questions that should be posed. And not because I want to have an aha gotcha moment with Donald J. Trump, but because I actually give a damn about this country. Just as I'm sure all of you do as well. You know, what makes America great is the fact that we can discuss our opinions, our beliefs, and our views without fear of governmental encroachment and interventionism. But unfortunately, due to the cancerous doctrine of political correctness that has been wielded as a weapon against the body politic of the United States and against the popular sovereigns of the United States, all of a sudden, that fear is gone. Remember, with the San Bernardino terrorists, Saeed Farouk and his wife Tashfeen Malik, the neighbor was afraid to report because of the stigma of political correctness. Why? Why have we fallen to such a point in this nation that we no longer embrace the great natural law tenets that put us apart from the rest of the world? Our founding fathers were not looking to create a nation that was like the rest of the world. They were trying to escape the ardent, rampant corruption that existed within the old world. And now we have people that try and emulate it. And you know, if Donald Trump is absolutely serious about his change of heart, then let me throw down a gauntlet for him. Let him take this step to prove that he's serious, not only to me, but to his voters, but to all Americans. If you actually believe that the Second Amendment keeps people safe, as I do, as Jeremy does, as our first Air Marshal Nelson Ward does, as Rising Tide does, as Chuck Nellis does, as the Politichicks do, as all of these great organizations do, and all of these great individuals do, then allow people to carry on your properties. Make that a blanket policy of your company. Do it now. Show the American people that you're serious. Otherwise, it's just more hair mousse. More of your slicking back of that toupee to try and convince us that you're not some snake oil salesman. But if you don't do that, if you don't take that step right here and right now, then you have proven once and for all that you are a charlatan. And Sarah Palin, you ought to be paying attention to this. And little Annie Coulter, little Toto there, yap, 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 you ought to be paying attention to this before we call the ASPCA on you, you little mangy mutt. It is time that we take things seriously in this country, but we can't take things seriously when Donald J. Trump is flip-flopping like one of those little twirlers, you know, like a pinwheel. His position is just constantly flittering in the wind, flittering, woo! But he doesn't stay consistent. He's consistently inconsistent. The only thing that is consistent is his inconsistence. Why? Because he's pandering to vote. So these intricicities of his come out and they say, oh, well, that's just business. Just business. Oh, no, don't pay attention to him. No, I'm going to pay attention to him because he's claiming that he is qualified to be the next president of the United States. That means he's going to be my representative. He's going to be your representative. He's going to be all of our representative. So let's see if he's really qualified to do it. Let's see if he has the class and if he has the caliber of character that the American people can look onto and be proud to say, this man represents me in wielding the highest office in the land. Otherwise, it's just more of the verbose garbage that we have seen all throughout the Barack Hussein Obama regime. Now, folks, don't you think America deserves a little bit better than that? Because I sure do. I believe that each and every one of you deserves a candidate that will absolutely stand up for and defend your fundamental and unalienable rights, not just merely play lip service to it. Oh, I support the Second Amendment. You know, it's huge. It's huge. But you know what's even more huge? The fact that I don't let you carry on my properties, that I don't trust you to defend yourself or to defend my other patrons. You know what that makes you, Donny Boy? Oh, Donny Boy, the Pied Piper of alleged conservatism. It makes you a charlatan, a hypocrite, and a liar. That's right. It makes you a liar. Little Annie, you say that Ted Cruz is lying, but look at your own boy's record there. I know it's very hard. I know that Toto is very, very loyal to her Pied Piper. Yep. Well, stop it. It's time to get real. It's time to care about this country. It's time to put your ego aside and see what matters for the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country. And the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country is we the people, not Donald J. Trump, not even Ted Cruz, not nerd-face Bernie Sanders, and certainly not Madam Clinton. You see, the people are what is important. That's the way our founding fathers intended this country to be. That is the way that our system of government was designed to work, and it is time that we just stop playing lip service to it and demand that these candidates vying for the highest office of the land stand up for, represent, and adhere to these principles and ideas. So far, there's only one candidate that I see that exhibits this in a consistent and principled manner, and that is Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz. So, Annie, why don't you go back to lying again? Sharpen your crayon, get your little construction paper out, and try and put together another one of your poorly written articles. Because maybe all of this pandering will make you relevant. But I just gotta cue you in here, little orphan Annie Toto. It doesn't make you relevant. In fact, your statements, your off-the-wall xenophobia type crap, your anti-Semitism, it's making you irrelevant. Absolutely irrelevant. You know, the United States of America is better than that. Yes, there is an illegal alien problem. Yes, it is something that can be addressed. It's addressed by securing the border and enforcing the laws. And yes, maybe we need a moratorium on legal immigration until there is a chance for this economy to stabilize. But to just go out on a limb and to spew this hate-filled rhetoric and vitriol, that doesn't accomplish anything. And it certainly doesn't make you any more relevant than you were. You're damaging your image, but worse yet, you're damaging the principles that you claim to adhere to, the principles of conservatism. Stop it. Just stop it. Stop the madness. Stop the insanity. You're better than that. You're smarter than that. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you've given it all up. Maybe you sold your soul. I don't know. I can't be the one to judge that. It's not my place to judge it. I just call it as I see it. And what I see is a bunch of hypocrisy. And I know that that is what the American people are sick and tired of. The American people want their country back. And they want their country to strictly adhere to the constitutional principles that made this country great in our relatively short yet illustrious history. That is going to require more than empty, hollow, shallow, and meaningless platitudes. Okay, so he makes deals. Great. FDR made deals too, and it made the country worse. LBJ made deals, and it made the country worse. We don't negotiate our constitutional principles. We don't negotiate our fundamental and unalienable rights, or inalienable rights, as the word means the same thing. We must stand firm on our principles and our convictions, and that is what a true American demands and requires. So, Annie, take notes. First and foremost comes the Constitution. Second comes enforcing the laws that are passed in adherence and furtherance of the Constitution. Third comes defending all rights, because 1 and 2 also implement that. That is the that is the integral recipe for bringing this country back, for reinvigorating and reigniting the indomitable spirit of the American people, which is unquestionably what should be the driving force, not some intricacies of Donald J. Trump, not some intricate pattern of a certain hair dye or a certain hair gel or a certain product for some day. Not changing my view at one point because I think it will be popular. The United States of America is not a business. It's a country. And it is time that we stand up for it as a country. And it is time that we demand the strict adherence to the United States Constitution that best serves the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country, we the people. I know that's a little difficult for you to comprehend right now, Annie, but that is exactly what this country needs. And it needs it now. You want to know what makes America great, folks? What makes this country great is the fact that we are the popular sovereigns, that our founding fathers took a leap of faith that was completely unprecedented during the era of our foundation. They claimed that sovereignty didn't rest squarely in the hands of an aristocracy or an individual. Remember that a sovereign lord was someone that absolutely had control over life and death and everything. Our founding fathers said that the right to life, to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness rested with we the people, that we were the ultimate ones that made that decision, that a true legitimate government had to be a government that governed with the consent of the people. That had never been tried before. That was new, totally revolutionary. That is what Thomas Paine pushed for in his pamphlet, Common Sense. Our founding fathers really were brilliant men. They had the foresight to see what it would be to create a truly open, honest, and free society. And that is embodied and codified in our shared United States Constitution. That is why this sacred document is the longest, contiguous, uninterrupted constitutional document and governmental document in all of world history. That is truly stunning. It's truly amazing. It shows that our founding fathers were operating with a greater purpose in mind. It wasn't about their egos. It wasn't about their wealth. It wasn't about their base desires. It was about something greater. It was about an ideal that could be handed down to posterity, and they absolutely expected the popular sovereigns to band together, to unite in solidarity and unity to defend and safeguard that dream. You know, that's why the United States of America is such a beacon to the rest of the world, why it is such a drawing force, such a powerful symbol of liberty. And it was absolutely designed for that purpose. But somewhere along the way, these Fabian socialists, with their nefarious plots and attempts, have gone in and attempted to wrest away that image, that view, that dream, and that aspiration from the American people. They want us to be downtrodden. They want us to be completely demoralized. But let this be the opportunity that we band together, as our founding fathers expected us to stand up and defend those principles that they fought so hard to establish. You know, the way that history is taught today, we sometimes get this erroneous and mistaken belief that the founding fathers just had an easy road. that the United States of America was preordained. No. The United States of America was inspired by Providence, but we had to work for it. Anything that is worth value, anything that holds any place of importance in this world is something that must be worked for. That's why socialism is such a demoralizing and evil philosophy and ideology. Because it tampers down on, it destroys the initiative and ingenuity of the sovereign individual. That is why the Fabian socialists, the so-called progressives, are just working tirelessly to strip away the foundational fabric of this country, to pit American versus American. They absolutely want to divide and thereby conquer the American people. And one area where Trump and Annie Coulter are right is that there is, particularly with Fox News and with all of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, this open borders nonsense. Why do they want to flood our country with those who haven't been proven to hold allegiance to everything that matters in this country? Because they want to divide us. They want to conquer us, and they want to replace us with a more malevolent, more docile public that doesn't hold allegiance to this great sacred contract that exists between every sovereign American citizen and their government. If you can redefine the United States, you can destroy the United States. You know, it's why this old, lingering, erroneous adage has continued and is such a dangerous position that the Constitution is a living document. Folks, if something's living, it can be killed. We, the people, as part of a process, are living. Our commitment to the Constitution is living. The rule of law, as it applies to us, is living because it must adapt to the circumstances on the grounds, but the fundamental cornerstone of our entire representative Republican system of government cannot be living. It's timeless. Just as the natural law tenets that define and outline it and mandate the proper scope and application of government is timeless. So it's just as applicable today as it was 200 years ago, as it will be, God willing, 200 years from now. But in order to do that, in order for the Constitution to protect us, we must protect the Constitution. That is our sworn duty and obligation. It is our calling as American citizens. We cannot be intellectually complacent with respect to this. We just cannot be generally complacent with respect to this. It is why I grow frustrated with people like Ann Coulter. I expect her, particularly as a fellow attorney, to understand the rule of law, to understand what it is that it takes to make sure that this country prospers, not just now, but for posterity. Because we are the stewards that are supposed to uphold the revolutionary dream and gift that was handed to us by our forefathers, by all of those pioneer visionaries who gave their blood, sweat, tears, and toils to build this more perfect union. That is the duty and obligation of the American sovereign. But somehow we have forgotten it. But the tides of history are lapping at the shores, calling us back to be proactive. It's calling us to stand up for and defend our liberty, now more than ever, because the agent provocateurs of tyranny, despotism, and oppression, they are knocking at the gate. They are frothing at the mouth like barbarians ready to tear down this shining city on a hill. And if we fail to stand up for what really counts and matters most at this, the hour of need for our Constitution, then yes, history will judge us most harshly. Folks, this isn't fear-mongering. This isn't hate-mongering. This isn't the diatribe of some radical who's completely disconnected from reality. This is the voice of a concerned American who's reaching out to his fellow citizens to say, look, folks, this country that we know and love, it's in dire straits right now, and we hold the key to saving it. But you know, this constitutional movement needs a principled leader, a leader that has been dedicated to it from the outset. And you know who that leader is? That leader who is vying for the highest office in the land right now, it's Ted Cruz. It's been Ted Cruz from day one. I grow more and more impressed with this man as I watch him vie for the highest office in the land. I was impressed with him coming into this because as the senator for my great state of Texas, he has made solemn vows to stand up for the Constitution, and that's exactly what he has done. He has faced every adversity, challenge, and obstacle placed in his path, and he has overcome it. We have to have that same kind of determination, zeal, and advocacy for our shared Constitution. That is our duty and our obligation, and we cannot shirk said duty and obligation. It's non-delegable. It is our responsibility to see that this country is put on the corrective path. Now, of course, folks, we have to be realistic about this and conclude as only the facts show, cannot just expect one man to save the country. Ted Cruz has even said as much. He is not a messianic figure. He is a realist. But above all, he is a constitutionalist. And so it is time for conservatives to coalesce behind this great man, this man who shares the same vision as our founding fathers, because we need that type of philosophy to apply to our representative Republican form of government once again. The whole reason that we are in the midst of a constitutional crisis right now as I speak into this microphone is because the powers of tyranny, despotism, and Fabianism have done everything to further strip away the fundamental and unalienable rights of the citizenry and to divide government from its proper scope and application as outlined, mandated, and defined in the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. This is the stark reality that we face in this country. And the fact that we have a candidate right now who is principled with respect to conservatism, who absolutely believes that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land and that it is the cornerstone of everything that matters with this government, that is like a blessing from on high. We should not miss this opportunity. We should not fumble and fall. Our convictions are more important now than ever. You know, the United States of America has faced worse presidents than Barack Hussein Obama. We faced tyranny with Abraham Lincoln that divided this country. We faced problems in the past, and we overcame them. It is time to prove that we have learned from the mistakes of the past so that we are not doomed to repeat them, so that we are not doomed to see this country falter and collapse on the brink of ruination, plunging in bits and pieces into the abyss, and to watch a swath of irreparable harm roll across the land like some cloud of dust. The United States of America is not just a nation, it is an ideal. It is an ideal based in the natural law principles that we are all free, independent sovereigns. You know, when we lose sight of that, when that gets judged in a negative light, when that gets pushed to the wayside in favor of saying that a government, a central authority, can best take care of the people, that is when our dream and the dream of liberty that is timeless starts to fade, because it gets further and further away like the distant stars twinkling in the heavens above, and it's threatened to be snuffed out by the cloud of dust, by those who have their own ulterior motives that are driven by a hate for this country and a contempt for its people. You know, charlatans are dangerous. And then charlatans that pretend to be amongst our rank and file are the worst sort of danger. The Fabian socialists always had, at the beginning, the iconography of a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I know I've repeated this, but it's that important. What does a wolf in sheep's clothing mean? It means that the wolf has camouflaged itself so that it can intermingle with the sheep, its intended victims. That is such a poignant image. It is such a simple yet powerful illustration of what the nefarious forces that are trying to destroy us do. You know, it's like Obama standing up there in 2008 saying, hope and change, hopey changey. You know, we just got to have hope and change in this country. Hope and change and we'll save it. Meaningless platitudes, like I'm going to build this big, beautiful wall and make Mexico pay for it, sounds fantastic, sounds magnificent. How? How are you going to do it? Don't just give me meaningless, hollow, empty platitudes. How are you going to do it? How are you going to rectify your past statements that you support your sister, a frothing at the mouth, left-wing Fabian socialist, to be on the Supreme Court? And need I remind you, Trumpy Longstockings, that she was appointed to the Supreme Court by none other than Bill Clinton. She has been utilized by you in a gross display of nepotism to use eminent domain to take private property away from citizens. Not for a public use, but for your casinos. And yet you say that Ted Cruz was wrong for appointing or for supporting the appointment of John Roberts to the Supreme Court. You know, in the beginning, John Roberts wasn't all that much of a left-wing fanatic. But yes, there were warning signs there. His support for Justice Jackson, his support for Wickard v. Filburn, which is a terrible decision with respect to the Dormant Commerce Clause. Folks, it basically said that a farmer that wanted to grow a little bit of extra wheat was breaking a law that was enacted during the Great Depression that said that he'd have to buy it from his fellow farmers. He couldn't save the money because that disparately impacted commerce, interstate commerce. That's not what the Founding Fathers meant in Article 1, Section 8. It's not what they meant. But it was extended that way. Yes, John Roberts is not the perfect Supreme Court Justice or Chief Justice. His two decisions with respect to the so-called Affordable Care Act and Patient Protection Act are abysmal examples of judicial activism at its absolute worst. But remember that George W. Bush's first choice would have been Harriet Miers, a judge much, who is much more akin to and aligned with Donald J. Trump's sister. You see, these inconsistencies that exist in the statements of Donald J. Trump in the past and the positions held by those closest to him and his own machinations just should be appalling to anyone who loves and supports the Constitution. And so that brings my attention back to little orphan Annie Toto. Yep. Ted Cruz is so sleazy. Yep. Stop it. Stop it. Do you not know the Constitution? Do you not care about the supreme law of the land? Obviously, your actions are showing you do not. If that is the case, please go and wallow in your irrelevance. Go and do that now, please. And let the adults run the country. Let the adults bring back this great representative republic of ours. Because if you don't stand for that, and if you don't adhere to that, you have betrayed your own principles, and you have betrayed your oath of office as an attorney, as an officer of the court. But I don't even know if you're licensed anymore, Annie. I know I am. I know Ted Cruz is. You can go run his name in the state bar, Raphael Edward Cruz. And you will see he's still active to practice, just as if you run my name, Randy Allen Wright, in the state bar, you will find that I am eligible to practice. I take my oath of office most seriously. And I understand that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land and that it absolutely needs to be protected and adhered to. That is why I support a candidate who wholeheartedly states that that is an integral part of his campaign, that that is a part of his political philosophy. And he has proven it by standing in front of the Supreme Court more times than any other Texas attorney and defending our rights. How often can we say that Donald J. Trump ever defended our rights? Oh, that's right. Never. Never. But he has used his sister to trample upon our rights when it suited his business for business expediency. Now, already, the trumpeters are sounding in the back of my mind with their shrill voice like a choir of screaming toddlers. You shouldn't make fun of Trump like that. It's just business. That's what it takes to do business in New York. If that's what it takes to do business in New York, then you shouldn't be doing business in New York. And it should be up to the citizens of New York to stand up against that. And I know there are decent New York citizens, particularly in the upper part of the state, who are appalled by what Manhattan does and how Manhattan votes. And I'm sorry that the city is preventing you from having your voice. The same type of pattern is beginning to develop here in the state of Texas. God willing, it doesn't become that way here. Otherwise, conservatism will be set back. But again, folks, it calls upon us as popular sovereigns to stand up for our fundamental and unalienable rights. It calls for us to dig into the truth, to discover what it is that is important about this country, not making lame brain, harebrained excuses for the inconsistencies of someone we support for president. If Ted Cruz said something that I thought was out of line with the Constitution, I would be shouting it from the mountaintops. Because my loyalty, my adherence goes to the Constitution, because that is part of the natural law that was handed down with my fundamental and unalienable rights by my Creator. And I will not betray that principle. I will not turn my back on that. And if that destroys me, then so be it. Let it destroy me, but at least I can say that I lived my life based on these firmly held, beloved, and sacred principles. That is what this country needs in its hour of need. That is the type of leadership and determination that the people, the popular sovereigns, the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country are hungering and yearning for as I speak into this microphone. And it's there, folks. It's there. We are to the point now of either we embrace the Constitution or we prepare to brace down to face the storm of destruction that is surely brewing just over the horizon, looming like a great torrent of death and destruction. We cannot, we must not, and we will not capitulate to these nefarious forces that are all about destroying this great representative republic of ours. We must be the ardent watchmen who do everything within their power to defend this great representative republic of ours. That is what posterity is going to call upon us to do. That is what our forefathers would call upon us to do. Our ancestors are counting on us. Our future is counting on us. You know, Marxist Rube E-I-E-I-O, like that little song, he's got a farm, he's out on his tractor, E-I-E-I-O, tries to say that he's the candidate of the future. That's fine, the future's great, but we have to encompass the past, the present, and the future. We must be all-encompassing because the Constitution is timeless. You know, if you're just looking to the future, or if you're just looking at the present, it's easy for you to waffle from one side of a coin to the next. You can flip a coin, as the Democrats did in Iowa, to make determinations and decisions. But that is not what a principled leader does. That is not what this country needs. We are at the breaking point now, ladies and gentlemen. We are at the point to where we can either take this fork in the road and decide to go down the failed policies of this Barack Hussein Obama regime, or the failed policies of corrupt, large, heavy-handed, overbearing government, or we can return to the principles of our Constitution by demanding, mandating, and requiring that all levels of government return to strict adherence to the supreme law of the land, our shared Constitution. You see, folks, this is not something that can just be brushed aside. It is an integral part of what it is going to take to revitalize this country. You need a plan, and your plan can be laid out in the confines of the Constitution. That's absolutely what is required. And you see, unlike an empty and meaningless, shallow platitude of, we're going to make America great again, it's huge, like my beautiful tower, it's huge. That's meaningless. The Constitution actually holds meaning. It holds value. It has been the longest uninterrupted constitutional governmental document in all of world history. Folks, this is what history is calling out to tell us to do. History says that the Constitution is the key. Our law says the Constitution is the key. Our founding fathers say and said that the Constitution is the key. When you have that great weight of evidence coalescing behind what it is that will actually push this country back to the lofty heights that it achieved in its short yet illustrious history, then there can be no question about the path that we must take as a nation, as a people, as a republic. We must embrace the tenets of American exceptionalism, because American exceptionalism is American constitutionalism. That is the truth. That's what the progressives don't want you to know. That's what the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media don't want you to know. And that is why Donald J. Trump is afraid to give you a consistent answer. It's why he flips and flops. He doesn't have these core central beliefs that are a prerequisite for being a decent and stellar president. You know, we can't just have a good president anymore. The straits that the country are in right now requires that we have a bold, swift, decisive, constitutionally endowed leader. And to be a constitutionally endowed leader, that means you must have an inherent working, fluent knowledge and understanding of the Constitution, and must innately understand that the people are the popular sovereigns. And again, the only candidate vying for the highest office in the land, that of President of the United States, is none other than Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz. It is that simple. It is that clear-cut. It is that dry. It is that black and white. This is one of those rare moments where history calls upon the people to coalesce behind a great leader. And the great leader is there. He's not a strong man. He's not dictatorial. He's not authoritarian. We don't need authoritarians. The only authority that counts in this country is the Constitution, and that's greater than any one man. And the real authority must, by the nature of our polity in this country, rest in the hands of the ultimate wielders of sovereignty, the popular sovereigns, the true sovereigns, we, the people. That is why our Constitution, the preamble to it, starts with "we the people." Those are not empty, meaningless platitudes. Those are the foundational blocks of this great representative republic and of this great and noble people. You know, Americans are compassionate because we understand just how blessed we are to have the greatest birthright of any people on the face of the planet. We are caring because we understand that by working together, we defend, promote, and protect our fundamental and unalienable rights. And we understand that those fundamental and unalienable rights are an integral part of our national character, heritage, spirit, and above all, identity. That is the reality that we embrace. But it has never come under the incessant and consolidated sort of attack that it has under this Barack Hussein Obama regime in living memory. Sure, we faced it before in our past, but now is the time. History is calling for us now. The spirit of our founding fathers are calling upon us now to unite behind a principled constitutional conservative, to form a coalition in support of the natural law principles and tenets that underpin our entire representative Republican form of government. And with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. As always, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your Captain Randy Wright, and I want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. I also invite you to leave any questions, comments, concerns, or whatever here on our YouTube page or on our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. And I also invite you to follow us at Twitter with our Twitter handle of @RadioAviationX. That again, folks, is all one word, @RadioAviationEX. And I also invite you to join Jeremy and yours truly the next time we take off over the friendly airwaves, leaving you with an indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment, unlike any other radio program or venue. Thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you next time. Take care.